Good evening and welcome back to the Aggie PrideCast. I am your host, Brian Holloway, and this week we have a very special show. We're going to start it out with Darren Corbett, the head boys basketball coach at Grimsley High School and the son of legendary basketball coach Don Corbett. And then later on, we're going to bring in Teresa Davis from Alumni Affairs, and she's going to run down all the great things that are going to go on for the greatest homecoming on earth. I know you've heard a lot of news about certain things homecoming this year, and so we're going to dispel all the rumors and going to get it straight from the correct source, Miss Davis. But so let's get started here with Coach Corbett, a name that is synonymous with A&T basketball. People love saying the name Coach Corbett, no question about it. I'm sure they love saying it at Grimsley High School as well. Very successful there, and Coach, just tell us for you what it meant for you to grow up as an Aggie.
Oh, wow. First of all, thank you for having me on the show, Brian. I'm really excited about being here and talking about Aggie basketball. But for me, growing up as an Aggie, it was a special experience because I think that we grew up, and when I say we, I'm talking about my siblings and I, we grew up in probably the best era, at least we're thinking, and as far as A&T basketball is concerned. We were able to see some of the greatest players that come through at the time, and just to see the hard work and dedication that our father had towards the program. It was just a really special time to be an Aggie.
For those of you who don't know, Don Corbett is going into the A&T Sports Hall of Fame, an honor that is long overdue this year, and certainly we are happy to see that. And also going in with him will be two of the greatest players in A&T basketball history. Some may argue the greatest, and Joe Binion and Eric Boyd. And so certainly an exciting time for that 80s era. What do you remember? What was your first memory of Aggie basketball?
Well, my first memory of Aggie basketball was, honestly, playing at Duke. We played Duke in the NIT, and that was really the first vivid memory that I had. The first year that we were here, I was only like 4 or 5, so I don't remember a whole lot about it. But I do remember going to Duke University and playing in the NIT the next year, and seeing the Aggie following and remembering that, and it was very special to see that happen, and then to watch it grow over the years. And the Aggie Nation is very faithful, and I think a lot of the success that we had was because of the community buy-in and support that the Aggies had. And then once we attribute a successful program, then I think it just grew from there. But, all of my memories are very fond of Aggie basketball from the 80s.
Take us back to the Joe Binion type era. What made him a special basketball player?
Joe was just a smooth player. He was a guy who, at 6'8", he could step out on the wing and shoot. He could post you up. He could bring the ball up the floor and initiate the offense. Just an excellent all-around player, but not just a player, but just a person in general. I remember Joe was, I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, but he always took me under his wing, and he always wanted to make sure that I was okay. And if I was on the bench or whatever, he always paid special attention. So, Joe is just a really dominant player. Unfortunately, this may be one of the players that may not have come to an HBCU in our time today. But, fortunately, the recruiting that my father was able to do at A&T, he was able to get players like Joe and like Eric to come to A&T and experience what it was like to not only be at an HBCU, but to be a successful player at an HBCU as well.
Did your dad ever talk about what some of his secrets and successes were in terms of recruiting? Everybody that talks about him talks about that New York pipeline that he had that came from New York to Greensboro. Did he talk about what made him such a successful recruiter?
More than anything else, the connections and the relationships that he built with people. I think, he had a relationship with a lot of the people in Rochester, New York, where I think he had a relationship with Joe Binion's principal, and he knew of Coach and what Dad was able to do. And then when he just continued that, with Joe and the success that he had, he was able to go back into Rochester and get another player like Claude Williams to come in after Joe, and then after Claude coming in, keeping that pipeline going with a player like Glenn Taggart. All three of those were tremendously successful, but I think it was the relationships that he built. He knew about the relationships with the Aggies that he built in with the Aggie Club in Washington, D.C., and then making connections with people in Michigan and the recruiting pipeline that he had out of Georgia as well, and still having the ability to recruit in state and get some of the better players that were in North Carolina at the time. So, but he really thought that recruiting was based upon the relationships that you had and bringing in those alumni and other people who wanted to help out and try to bring the best players to North Carolina A&T.
Now, the media landscape is much different now, and so we get a lot of attention for our atmosphere at Corbett. But I can imagine those 80s atmospheres and what they tell me, the line looped around the building. What was that like being in Corbett during those years? Fans are on the floor, just a different look to Corbett. What was that like back then?
Yeah, Club Corbett started a long time ago. Trust and believe in that. Because of the success that the team had, A&T and the buy-in for the community, it was nothing to see 7,000 people in the gym on a Monday night to watch you play Maryland Eastern Shore. I know our big rivals during that time, more than anything, was Winston-Salem State and Howard. And so you knew you were going to get 7,005 people standing room only every night to watch those type of games. But we would also get those same type crowds for other teams as well, because people knew there was going to be a great atmosphere and you were going to get a great team on the floor at the same time. So, I think people might mainly like it to what we have with Central now when we see Central coming into Club Corbett, but it was pretty much like that every night when we came out and stepped out on the floor. So just a great atmosphere. Pet band was always rocking, the cheerleaders going the whole time, and then great basketball on the floor. It was just a perfect combination. I think it was the predecessor to what we see today in Club Corbett.
No question about it. Talk a little bit about your dad's coaching style. Did he make some funny comments to players? How tough was he? What made him the success that he was?
He was tough. There's no question about that. He was tough on you, but I think he also let his players know that he cared about them as the entire person as well. They weren't just a basketball player to him. So when you came to A&T, I think he knew, and he let parents know as well, that he was going to do the things that he needed to do in order to make them be successful afterwards. So yeah, he was going to be hard on you. He was going to be tough. If he called you homeboy, you knew you were in trouble. But he just had a way of balancing that, so that, yeah, you may get the toughness, but he's also going to call you into his office and ask you how you were doing, what your day was like, what's going on in your life, how can I help you out? So, I think most of his players will tell you that. And I think that, it still lasts today. And when I do talk with his players, former players, quite frequently, those guys I look upon as brothers, and they talk about the impact that he had on their lives just because of the discipline that he gave to them, but also the nurturing that went along with that. So it was a good balance that he was able to find and really make sure that his players knew that he cared about him as more than just a player at North Carolina A&T. He wanted to develop them into men who could be successful once they left A&T.
Now, Eric Boyd's cousin, Corey Robinson, who filled in for him on the Hall of Fame video, he talked about Don Corbett being a second father to him always, and when he made major decisions, it was Don Corbett that he called. Was that the case with a lot of his players, where they kind of saw him as somebody to help them make decisions?
I believe so. Yeah, I really do. They look at him in that father figure manner, and that's why they felt comfortable coming back and asking him what his opinion would be on a certain situation. And they also knew that he was going to tell them the truth. He wasn't going to beat around the bush. He wasn't going to sugarcoat the answer and tell you what you wanted to hear. He was going to tell you what you needed to hear. And so I think a lot of his former players respected him for that, not just his players at A&T. There was nothing for him to have players at Lincoln University, where he worked at before he came to A&T, and at Tennessee State. Those guys would still call him and ask about certain things where it had to do with their lives or maybe job switches or something like that. But they always wanted to reach out to him and see what type of opinion he had on the situation. So I think they trusted him more than anything else.
Now, they won those 7 straight MEAC titles. And another thing that Eric's cousin stressed was that the one regret Eric had here at A&T were never able to win one of those NCAA tournament games. Was that your father's regret, that despite all the championships, they weren't able to advance in the tournament?
I think it was one of the things that he wanted to do. Of course, you want to when you get to the NCAA, you've had such a great season and you want to end it on the right note. But, if you look at some of the teams that we had to play in the first round, when you're talking about a Alabama and a Oklahoma or a Syracuse or, Kansas, if you think about it, there may have been 64 teams in the tournament, and those teams probably would have beat 60 of the other teams in the tournament. So, it's just the luck of the draw sometimes. We got close with a game in Dayton, Ohio, a game that we played against Morehead State. And Morehead State won they won that game on I think it was a made basket. I was actually at the game. I was like 8 years old. But, they were very close to winning that game. And believe it or not, Brian, that was the first time that that instant replay was used in a sporting event, because there was a multiplayer collision. And I think it was Eric that actually ended up going to the free throw line, but the referees went back to the camera and looked at it. That was the first time that had ever been done in the history of sports. And so that was the closest that we had gotten to winning a game in the NCAA tournament. But, I was very fortunate because, when I worked with Coach Alexander, when I was on staff at A&T, we actually went back to Dayton and we were able to get A&T's first NCAA tournament win. So that was very sweet, that memory, because I remember, like I said, going there as a young child and experiencing that disappointment. But the joy in being able to call my dad afterwards, after we won that game, and then to hear the joy and the pride in his voice, knowing that we were successful and we were able to get the first NCAA tournament win for A&T. So although that was something that he really wanted to accomplish, and but it just didn't work out that way. But I don't think he ever felt regret for not winning those games.
Yeah, I understand that they put Joe Binion on the line instead of Eric Boyd, and Eric was an excellent free throw shooter. The way I hear that story,
it was actually James Horace who went to the free throw line. Yeah, okay. James Horace went to the free throw line instead of Joe. But again, it's just one of those things that happened. It was unfortunate, but we were close a couple times. The game in Chapel Hill against Syracuse, I really thought we had a really good chance to win that. But in the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game, they just had too much size that took over for them. But those were games that we were right there, and we knew we had a chance to win, but just unfortunately the ball didn't bounce our way those games.
Did he ever reflect on the fact that there's not too many schools that can boast of 7 straight MEAC championships? Did he ever look back on that after everything was over and just marveled at how impressive that accomplishment was?
He knew of it. He would rarely talk about it. So, one of the things about him, he was so humble, Brian. He never bragged about his accomplishments. We're in a day or an age today where you have so many coaches who are self-promoting and want to show what they did here and there and all that stuff. But that was never his style. He was very humble about his accomplishments. He knew what he accomplished, but he just never was out there talking about it. So, to be in a situation where you've won 7 straight conference tournaments, and the only other person in the history of college basketball who can say they've done that is Adolph Rupp at Kentucky, you're in a rare company right there. But again, it wasn't his nature to go out and brag about it. Dad was very humble and just, he just wanted to make sure that he did what he was supposed to and did it the right way, but never really bragged about it.
Now, you can't tell the story of Corbett without talking about the fight. There's no question about it. There's every time you start talking about the history of A&T basketball, I think if you wrote a book, there would be a chapter in there about the quote unquote fight. As he reflected, did he ever reflect on that night, that I guess you could call it historic night, because it's a night that everybody it's one of those situations where it's the Wilt Chamberlain game. Everybody all of a sudden was there,
Right.
Did he ever reflect on that night and what that meant for A&T basketball, the program, just the downside of that night? Does he ever talk about that?
I think more than anything else, Brian, he was, he never wanted to bring any negative attention to North Carolina A&T because he had worked so hard to put it in a certain stratosphere of basketball. And so, unfortunately, that fight did cast a negative light on A&T basketball and the program, but he just didn't want that to overshadow all of the great things that we had done. It was a scary situation. I mean, it really was. And I think what gets lost in the mix was that it was a really good basketball game. And so I think we were up at the time that it started, and something started in the stands, and then it sort of got down to the court. But it became a very scary situation. I remember being there. I remember being on the court now, or on the edge of the court, looking to try to find him to make sure that he was okay. But once I saw him slinging guys off left and right, he knew how to handle himself. But yeah, it's one of those things that we wished it never happened, but it happened. It is what it is. So it's something he just didn't want to bring negative attention to A&T. He loved A&T that much, man. He really did. It would be an honor for him to be here with us so he could go into the Hall of Fame and be there for that ceremony, because A&T was, really what he loved more than anything.
And my understanding was that he was very supportive of the coaches who came behind him. Most of the coaches I talked with said that, they get a call from Don Corbett after wins, congratulating them. He just seemed like he privately was very supportive of the coaches that came after him.
Privately. And he did that intentionally. His thing was he had his day. He didn't need to be at the game behind the bench or be the television shot or something for someone to call back to and say, hey, the former coach is here. That wasn't his style. So he did most everything with all of the other coaches who came through A&T privately. I know that he had a really good relationship with Jerry Eves. They would quite often go out to lunch or to breakfast or whatever, and they would talk. He'd go to maybe one practice or two practices out of the year where he would sit up high and away, so he didn't want to draw attention to himself or anything. But, I know that he wanted those coaches to be the dominant face. He did not want to be there as the guy who was in the background looking to see. That wasn't the way he wanted to do things. But I think every coach that came through North Carolina A&T, I know he had a great relationship with. So for whether it was Coach Roy Thomas or with Coach Eves, as I spoke about, Coach Alexander, he and Coach Alexander go way back. Back to when Coach Alexander was an assistant at Howard and then went on to South Carolina State. So they developed a friendship and a relationship from that. But, even with Coach being there, Dad didn't want to come down on the sidelines and do all that stuff to draw any attention to him. He wanted it to be about Coach Alexander and the program that he was running.
Now, there's a commercial I like on TV where it says, I think it's like you turned into your parents. As you're out there and you're coaching, there's some moments where you go, oh, man, I sound like him.
Yeah. I've had several people, several Aggies who come to our games at Grimsley, and they tell me, man, if you don't look just like your dad, and you can't help it. I was looking at a video the other day where I was watching a game with us in Howard on BET. I think it was from maybe 1986, 1987. And I'm sitting right behind him, and I did that for years. So for me, it's just second nature to kind of do some of the things that he did when he was coaching. I may not be as gruff as he was, but when I hear those things, I take that as the highest level of a compliment, because he was an absolutely outstanding coach.
And before we let you go, tell us about Grimsley. How are they looking this season, and what are some of the things you guys are hoping to kind of accomplish going into 2021, 22, and how has COVID affected your program?
Yeah, we're excited about our year here at Grimsley. We have a great returning core. We went 10-2 last year, a COVID shortened season. So, we felt really strongly about our performance, and with 5 of our players coming back, and we have a good young nucleus coming in as well. So we're trying to solidify Grimsley as being one of the teams in the city that people talk about, and they're like, okay, when you think good basketball, you think about Grimsley High School. So, we're excited about the year. We know it's going to be tough. We're going into a different conference this year with 3 or 4 different teams. So night in and night out, we're going to get everybody's best performance. But really, that's what you want. I know when I step out on that sideline every time, I got a legacy that I'm trying to protect. So I know I can't go into any situation half-stepping, because the Corbett name is synonymous with success when it comes to basketball. So I want to continue that. And I'm just very fortunate that our principal here at Grimsley, Mr. O'Donnell, and our athletic director, Coach Ethan Albright, those guys have given me the opportunity to come back to Grimsley and to do some great things with their support. So we're excited about it. But, when you think about COVID and what happened last year, we were in a situation where we were shut down twice early on in the season because of COVID. So, we practiced maybe 4 or 5 games. And then after that, here we had a exposure. So we'd have to shut down for 10. Then we'd come back for 2 days and we shut down for another 10 after that. So I think we went into our first game last year with only maybe 6 practices under our belt. But with the experienced team that we had, we were able to still have some success. So we're hoping to try to do the same thing this year. But, we know we've got a target on our chest. So we've got to come ready every night.
Success, basketball, and the name Corbett definitely all go together. Darren was a part of that staff that won the last A&T MEAC championship and went on to win the first ever NCAA tournament game, North Carolina A&T history.
Very proud of that.
Yeah, so certainly greatness comes along with that Corbett name. Congratulations to Don and his players for going into the A&T Sports Hall of Fame. And I thank you for joining us today, Darren. I appreciate it, Coach.
All right. Thank you. Aggie Pride.
Aggie Pride. That's Darren Corbett, head boys basketball coach for Grimsley High School and the son of Don Corbett. And certainly appreciate him joining us today. And now joining us is Miss Teresa Davis, Alumni Affairs. Her hair is looking great, outstanding. Looks fresh. So we are ready to go here. Teresa, welcome to the Aggie PrideCast.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it. First time here. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it, and you're looking great. So let's get to it.
Thank you.
You guys put out some news yesterday about the greatest homecoming on earth. Just kind of break down that for us a little bit, and what does that mean for our alumni and fans?
So thank you. So yes, so the greatest homecoming on earth will occur this year. However, there will be some modifications. So this year, to help us to manage overcrowding at some events, and also help us to maintain control, to somehow maintain control over those events where we can't have control over crowds. We have canceled the parade, the Aggie Fan Fest, and the Greek Plots tailgating event sponsored by Student Activities. And then also we will be following the protocols that were announced yesterday as part of the football season as well, where to enter the game, you have to show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test. And those protocols will be adhered to at other homecoming events that is taking place. The one exception will be at the events that are taking place at the Coliseum. And the Coliseum has a mask mandate in place for the events from start to finish. So everyone attending all the events at the Coliseums must wear a mask throughout the event.
So it sounds like we're going to have, of course, the homecoming football game, which is good news. Concert is still in play. Is the gospel concert and the alumni concert also still in play?
The gospel concert will take place. We will be making an announcement about the alumni concert soon. Yes.
Do you think these protocols that we are putting in place will damper the mood, or do you think Aggies are just ready to get back to their homecoming events?
Well, I think just overall in general, the whole, I think we are all over the whole COVID-19 thing, but it's very real. And we still need to take the precautions until we get to the place where we don't have to. It's the look and feel of the greatest homecoming on earth, the 2021 edition, will be a little different. And, there may be some different feelings behind that. But what I am banking on is that good old Aggie spirit, that Aggie pride energy that's unconditional, that will be ever present, regardless. So it will feel a little different, but I think the foundational energy that is Aggie pride will help keep spirits lifted.
What type of feedback have you gotten? And to me, I think a lot of people appreciate some of the safety protocols that we put in place. What type of feedback have you gotten back since releasing these safety protocols?
We've received some good feedback as well, both on social media and some emails that we've received in the office. Of course, there's still some questions to answer in terms of some other events that we did not highlight in the press release. And then, of course, and then there are also the feelings of, why didn't you just cancel homecoming? So, we have that as well. So, but in general, one of the things that we did as we were reassessing homecoming for 2021 is that we administered a poll to take a pulse and see, and check on engage our alumni's feelings about 2021 homecoming, mainly around, will you attend? And the results of that survey showed us that 60% either responded, yes, I am attending homecoming, or maybe I will attend homecoming with some modifications. And the remaining folks said, yep, I'm not coming to homecoming. So based on that gave us a pretty good insight into the feelings of alumni. And then I guess that also helped us with the decision that we made to move forward with and bringing the alumni experience to our Aggies. And yes, we know our Aggies missed it, but at the same time, putting in the appropriate safety precautions for everyone.
Now, there has to be a lot of moving parts to putting together an event such as A&T's homecoming. Just kind of give us a basic synopsis of all the things that you have to supervise and monitor in order for us to have all the successful homecomings that we've had over the years.
So the first thing is that I want to note is that my office is not solely responsible for everything homecoming. However, I do co-chair the university's homecoming committee along with Robert McNair, my colleague in student affairs. So there is a cast of many that are part of the university's homecoming committee, in addition to our partners with the city of Greensboro. And so many stakeholders are part of the planning process. But we get together, we start basically start in March, April of every year, starting discussions around homecoming, and each respective area begins their own planning. And we bring it all together as a university committee to make sure that we're all in sync, and to make sure that we identify any risks and concerns that we will need to mitigate. And we do it as a team. Yes, a lot of the events come out of my office as well as student activities, but it is a true team effort in making homecoming successful.
You can go ahead and admit that you have to carry Robert McNair a little bit, though. You have to, carry the weight a little bit. No, he does an outstanding. Robert's a good guy, and certainly, I'm sure, excellent to work with. How many suggestions do you get every year about what homecoming should look like? I'm sure you get a lot of suggestions in the position that you're in.
Oh, yes. So sometimes I think I have a staff of 50,000 um, with folks. But you know what? I love it because, and in my team and I, we talk all the time is that sometimes we can't think of everything. We can't see everything. And so sometimes that feedback helps us to go down paths that, maybe, you know, the work that we do doesn't naturally take us down, certain paths. So the feedback is tremendous. Everything from inviting certain artists to the alumni concert to, what other activities we need to fit on campus after the game. So this it runs the gamut. We have a full spectrum of ideas that comes from our Aggies, but you know what? It's done out of love and true support for A&T.
How many conversations, how long ago did you guys start talking about some modifications to homecoming? Was it when the Delta variant started to kick in, or was it more recent? When did you guys start to talk about modifications?
Modifications, those discussions started back in April, as a matter of fact. So let's just say that we went through a couple of iterations of homecoming. Definitely we had to revisit again when the Delta variant became more prevalent in our community. So this wasn't a discussion that just started. We started the ball rolling back in April. And it was truly, and it has been truly, and it will continue to be a roller coaster ride. And not only for us, but other institutions are feeling the same type of, or having the same type of experience in terms of trying to plan for their respective constituencies, with this COVID-19 still being at the center of attention.
Were you surprised at what you saw from college football last weekend? The packed stadiums, the unmasking. Were you surprised? And are we looking at a cultural difference in how we may view it here and how it may be viewed at a PWI?
I wouldn't say. I don't know if it will be a cultural difference, but to your original question, yes, I was surprised, but I would think it was to be expected. So, with just the build up and the anxiety to get back out there, yeah, I was like, yeah, that I could see why, but it was still shocking nonetheless. It was still shocking nonetheless. So, but we'll see what A&T's first home game and see what the feeling is and the look and feel of it. But I just think that the excitement behind actually having fans at football games underscores what we saw last weekend.
Tell us about your history as an Aggie. When you went to the school, I think you were a student athlete as well. So tell us about your history as an Aggie and what gives you Aggie pride.
Oh, well, my history starts a long time ago. And I say that because I attended the A&T Child Development Lab in the early 70s when my family lived here in Greensboro. And of course, when we moved to Atlanta, I always knew I was coming back to A&T, which I did. I played softball while I was here. I was an accounting major, and I finished in 1989. Soon after graduation, a couple of years, I became involved with the North Carolina A&T Alumni Association, and had, if you want to call, somewhat of a career in the Alumni Association, where I held several positions, from chapter president, alumni chapter president in Charlotte, to the national presidency. Held that position for 4 years. Continued my involvement in terms of supporting the university, where became involved with the Aggie Club, which was a booster organization, athletic booster organization at that time, and became president of the Aggie Club. And I think I was the first former student athlete to become president at that time, as well as the first female. I'm going to have to make sure I double check, but that was a fun experience. And then, of course, that rolled into when we started the Aggie Athletic Foundation. And Joe Parker served as the first board chair of that, and I followed him serving as board chair of the Aggie Athletic Foundation when it started a few years back, and completed, I'm going to say, almost two and a half terms, because in the middle of my second term as board chair of the AAF, the position of this particular position became open, and the rest is history.
Teresa Davis from Alumni Affairs joining us here on Aggie PrideCast. She's not only an excellent in Alumni Affairs, but she's historic, as you just heard. She's done a couple of firsts here at North Carolina A&T, and so certainly we appreciate her joining us. You have your ear to the ground as far as alumni goes. What is some of the talk about us moving from the MEAC to the Big South?
Oh,
Got a tough question.
It is going to be an evolving process. Any change is challenging. And with our history with the MEAC, with our deep history, with the MEAC, the coming to the Big South is a huge. It was a lump in the throat for a lot of our Aggies. And I just think, as with anything, as with any type of change, time is going to be the healer in terms of becoming more comfortable in being in the Big South. One thing for sure is that, and then I always remind folks that I speak with, it's like our Aggie pride is going to go everywhere with us. The Aggie pride will never fade away. And if anything, it is a huge asset, new asset to the Big South. And I think the introduction of that was the attendance at the Furman game last weekend, where our Aggies showed up and showed out. As always. So yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time, and probably a few wins to make it easier. But I think it will become more comfortable as we move further into the Big South.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking forward to UNC Asheville and Winthrop coming into Club Corbett and them having to see that atmosphere. I don't think they've ever experienced anything like that before. It's going to be new.
No. I think that's going to be eye-opening, and we're going to have a lot of folks walking away. It's like, wow, wait till you go to Club Corbett. It's going to be an experience like no other.
And at the end of the day, deep down inside, we're always going to be an HBCU. That's our DNA. That's who we are. And, no matter where we go, we're always going to have that HBCU brand with us. So there's no question about that.
Absolutely.
How much has it helped a little bit that we've got a 10-year contract with North Carolina Central? We've got a 4-year contract with Norfolk State. We play Winston-Salem State in 2024. All of these football. Does that help a little bit that we're keeping some of those traditional rivals in place?
Oh, absolutely. When the announcement was first made about moving to the Big South, that that commitment was stated in terms of making sure that we maintain those rivalries. And I think it's key because it is part of our DNA as North Carolina A&T in having those interactions with other HBCUs. So yes, absolutely, it helps. I think it will help us, as we ease into the Big South. But I'm hoping that it will continue beyond those years, because again, that's just part of who we are as we grow into a new conference. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you do outside of having to plan homecomings. I'm sure there's much more to your position than just that. So just kind of run down a little bit what it entails in terms of alumni affairs.
So one thing, Brian, just want to know, we're alumni relations. So that was a change before I got here, in terms of being more descriptive of what we do in our office. But yes, we have lots of programming to engage our alumni, everything touching population segments, everything between students and our seasoned alumni. So with our students, we have a group in our office, the Aggie Student Alumni Council, that helps us to create programs to engage students while they're on campus, and in essence, teaching students how to become great alumni. And then we have a Young Alumni Council that helps us with creating ideas around engaging the young alumni at North Carolina A&T. Last year, we also launched and introduced the new Advisory Council for Alumni Relations, which is a tremendous group. And they help us in general, keeping eyes and ears in the alumni space. And as we strategize on programming, they are our eyes and ears and help us to identify gaps and whatnot, as well as other things in terms of being alumni ambassadors. Tonight, as a matter of fact, we're having a recording of for our Aggie's Certified Alumni Recruiter Program, a program in which we partner with the Office of Undergraduate Admissions to offer additional resources, or another pool of resources for our Office of Undergraduate Admissions via our alumni volunteers to participate in college fairs. We also have class reunions, help to manage class reunions every year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that in full style for the last couple of years, but we've introduced virtual components. Let's see. Oh, then, of course, through our office and our Director of Alumni Communications, we have the Alumni Times, which is our monthly newsletter that we send out to alumni, that includes all kinds of information about the university, about alumni, and other things that we try to share in that newsletter. So that's the snippet of some of the other things that we do in our office, all in the spirit of engaging and creating that lifetime loyalty from our alumni with their alma mater. So, yep, is busy. Sometimes people think that during the summertime that it's a wind down for us, and it is absolutely not the case. So the wheels are always churning here in the Office of Alumni Relations.
So to me, you look like a home run hitter. What were some of your strengths on the softball field? Were you a speedster? Were you a slapper? Did you hit the long ball? I mean, this is your moment now, to brag a little bit, and maybe to embellish a little bit. But those type of softball players you were.
Because I don't think the records are here anymore. But anyway, it was interesting, my experience as a softball player. I was a walk-on in the softball team because I played, softball through high school and elementary school. And I walked on as an outfielder, and I was converted to a catcher because my freshman year, our catcher was a senior, and the coach at that time decided, Teresa, you're going to become a catcher. Okay. So that was a completely different experience, especially with trying to catch with a baseball. That didn't work too well. I was an average player, and did my part on the team. Let's just say that did my part on the team.
Well, this lady, I know her well. She's anything but average. If anything, she's exceptional and does an outstanding job. And we are so fortunate to have her on board. And I appreciate her joining us here today. That is Teresa Davis of Alumni Relations. And we want to thank her for, taking out some of the time of her busy schedule just to explain to us some of the things that are going on with homecoming. And we really appreciate it, Teresa.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate the invitation, and I leave everyone with a hearty Aggie Pride.
Aggie Pride. You guys have a great evening, and we'll join you next week on the next Aggie PrideCast. Bye-bye.
Bye.